Welcome everybody. As you settle in to enjoy a little learning with us today, please make sure you use the chat to tell us who you are, where you're from, and what role you have in education. We'd love to find out more about you.
All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Not Your Average PD. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. My name is Carrie Horton. I'm the program manager for the Kenan Fellows program out of NC State University in Raleigh, North Carolina. We have the Kenan Fellows program is a nonprofit organization that has been investing in educators across the state of North Carolina for the past 24 years. And we now have nearly 600 alumni across the state. And they are just amazing educators doing some, amazing things. And so Not Your Average PD is just one way that we're tapping into this talent across our state and bringing professional development to educators by educators. So if you want to learn more about our programming, you can visit our website at www.kenanfellows.org, and I am going to paste it into the chat. But tonight we are featuring our Kenan Fellow alumni, Paul Cancellieri, and he is a middle school science teacher at Roseville Middle School in Wake County, North Carolina. Paul is a 2011-2012 Kenan Fellow alumni and the co-author of Creating a Culture of Feedback, Empower Students to Own Their Learning, which is available on Amazon. There's your shameless plug, Paul. He is currently finishing up a new book on AI prompts and advice for teachers that will hopefully be ready in the summer. And I am lucky to call him colleague and friend. And so we are honored that he's here with us tonight to share his expertise on AI in the classroom. So welcome, Paul.
Thanks so much, Carrie. I appreciate it. I am going to make one more request for those of you that are joining us either through the webinar platform or through YouTube Live to go ahead and use the comments to tell us a little bit about yourself. Let us know your name, let us know where you're from, and what you teach, what your educational role is. We are excited to connect with so many of you and looking forward to sharing this hour together, learning together. We are going to do some things as well as talk about some things, and I hope you walk out of here with some really useful strategies and maybe even some products that you can put to use as quickly as tomorrow morning in your classroom. So without further ado, Carrie, if you could throw my slides up on the screen for me. Thank you. So we're going to get started with what I'm calling AI for Teachers, the sous chef that every teacher deserves. If you're really experienced with AI, then you may find some things here that you haven't heard about before. But I'm especially excited to get a chance to talk with those of you that are very limited in your experience with AI, because I think you'll find that you learn a whole lot. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask, and that's me there in my handle on social media. We'll talk more about that later on. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to use the chat to respond to this question for me. We're going to use this format a lot over the coming minutes here as I try to get some of your feedback about what you're thinking and what you're feeling about what we're discussing. So right now on a scale of 1 to 3, and that can be numbers, it could be robot emoji like mine, please tell me a little bit about how much experience you have already with artificial intelligence tools. So just on a scale of 1 to 3 or a number 1, 2, or 3 in the chat, tell us a little bit about what you have already done and what you're already familiar with. Love the feedback. It looks like we're getting a bunch of responses here. And as expected, I'm seeing an average of somewhere between 1 and 2. Definitely a lot of people who feel like they're in the middle of that scale. They have some experience, and looks like we've got a few of you that feel pretty confident with your experiences with AI and some of you that are novices, and that's perfect. That's exactly the kind of audience that we were hoping to have. So to kick things off, let's talk about what's been going on with AI and why it seems to be the center of conversation lately. In fact, over the last 18 months, really, we've seen a really big shift toward talking about AI in ways that honestly are a little bit scary. I know if, like me, you read the news either online or you watch it on TV, you've probably seen lots of headlines like these that are honestly kind of scary. They bring home the fact that there are all these negative consequences that can come from artificial intelligence. There's not a lot of good news that you see in places like the internet and on TV, and I'm here today to kind of push back a little bit against that. Despite the fact that as educators, we often are in a place right now where we feel like the only use of AI is as a cheating tool for our students, a tool that's going to make our jobs even more difficult going forward. But like I said, what I really want to do is push back against that a little bit. So when I talk to teachers, what I hear from a lot of teachers is something similar to what you see in this clip from the movie Ratatouille. What they fear, what they worry about, is that students and even teachers to some extent are just letting these AI bots do the work for them, misrepresenting what they know or what they're able to do. This is that whole cheating angle, but also just false information that you can get through things like deepfakes and voices that can be generated by AI that sound like the real thing. In addition to that, I got some people that are telling me that they fear that with all the power that AI has, this may represent the end of human creativity. Some pretty scary stuff, right? And if we take it even a step further, like this scene from near the end of Ratatouille, where the rats are taking over the whole kitchen, there are plenty of teachers who will tell you that they think we may not even have jobs in the future, that AI tools may take our place, that we may end up having to train them, and they'll end up doing all the educating. And this leads to a real existential crisis for a lot of teachers. But as I said, I think it's really important that we temper all of these things that we're hearing and reading with a little bit of balanced information. And so I want to pause for a minute and talk about what it is that teachers need right now. And I'm coming to you as a 21-year veteran of the middle school classroom. So somebody who is right there in the trenches. I was teaching earlier today, and it was one of those days where my students really pushed my patience to the limit. And so I feel the pain that a lot of teachers feel. And when I talk to teachers and think about my own experiences, there are some things right now that I think teachers could use to help them when it comes to helping our students learn as much as possible. The first is a thought partner, somebody who we can brainstorm with, bounce ideas off of, refine our thinking, maybe even push us to think about things that we wouldn't normally think about. And the second thing I think all teachers really need right now would be like an intern, somebody who could help us generate content that we could then proofread and make changes to, but somebody who could generate those drafts that might not be perfect, might not be ready for our students to see, but would be far enough along the way that it would save us a lot of time and a lot of energy. And finally, I think what we could all use would be a little bit of help when it comes to assessing our students' learning. Somebody to help with that massive workload of grading. I teach almost 130 students every day, and I know that many of you out there have course loads that are even bigger than that. And it can feel insurmountable to provide the kind of feedback that students need to really improve their learning. But as the images on the right show, there is some place that we can look for ideas about where these helpers, these other roles may come from. What you see on the right there are scenes from some YouTube videos of sous chefs working in one of the most famous kitchens in America. And what the sous chef in a kitchen does, among many other things, is provide a listening ear and feedback to the head chef or executive chef, as well as helping to prepare a lot of the meals that are made in that kitchen. In fact, sous chefs have been part of our pop culture for quite a while. You may recognize some of these clips from, or stills from many TV shows and movies. I have to admit, I'm a big fan of cooking TV shows and cooking movies, whether it be reality shows or fictional shows. I'd love for you guys to use the chat to see if you can recognize any of these sous chefs from TV shows and movies that you may have seen, because I'd love to know whether you even recognize the times that you've been presented with representations of sous chefs on the big screen or the little screen. So take a minute, use that comment box, that chat field, and tell us a little bit about which ones you recognize. Oh, great, Heather. So Heather sees all of them and Jess doesn't recognize any of them, and that's perfect. I will start by pointing out my favorite show right now of all, which is called The Bear, and it's on Hulu, and I hope that many of you have seen it as well. It's a really exciting take on fine dining and really interesting characters. And so the clip in the top left corner is Sydney, who's the sous chef on that show, The Bear. To the right of her is John Leguizamo, famous actor in the hat there, working alongside the head chef, Jon Favreau, on the show, on the movie Chef, which I saw that some of you recognized. To the right of them is the always gorgeous Aaron Eckhart, who played a sous chef alongside Catherine Zeta-Jones in the movie No Reservations. On the bottom, a couple of more recent scenes. We have the sous chef from the movie The Menu in the bottom left corner there. That's Ralph Fiennes as the head chef. And that one's a lot darker, for sure. If you've seen that one, you know that that sous chef doesn't make it much further in this movie. No spoilers, but yeah. And then, of course, the animated one in the bottom middle there is from Ratatouille, and that's the German ex-con named Horst, who was the sous chef on that particular movie. He hinted at some of his criminal past as he was serving meals in Gusteau's restaurant. So sous chefs are all around us, whether we recognize them or not. Even if you're familiar with how kitchens work, you may not know what really a sous chef does. And so let's take a moment before we continue with this metaphor to really talk about the difference between the head chef or executive chef and the sous chef. So I want to focus on the column on the right and those things that sous chefs are responsible for. So they help the head chef to develop menus by providing feedback. Oftentimes they are as experienced as the head chef. And so they've seen lots of things and done lots of things in the culinary arts. They also help do what they say in French is mise en place. That's the creation, the preparation of ingredients that are going to come together for the meal. They also work with the line cooks that they supervise to make sure that the different parts of the menu are going to come together properly. And of course, they're the first ones to taste dishes before they're tasted by the head chef or put in front of a customer. So I hope you're starting to see how what sous chefs do in a kitchen is similar to what we teachers need right now in our classrooms and what AI might be able to provide for us. So that's the question that's going to drive the rest of the time that we have together, is how can AI models like the ones that are in the news currently, the ones that many of you have probably played around with, how can they provide us with that level of collaboration, that level of support that we need as teachers? Now, I choose the word collaboration specifically because I think it captures really well the way that we are meant to interact with these AIs. They're not designed to be self-sustaining, self-managing tools that work for us. We're meant to work with them in a conversation that starts with us asking for something, getting some kind of output from the model, and then refining that request, adding details, providing feedback to the model until we get the thing that we need, the thing we're looking for that's going to help us in our classroom. And so when you think about it that way, it's easy to see these AI tools as collaborators, as partners in the learning that we're trying to do in our classrooms. Now, because I know that some of you are not very familiar with artificial intelligence and what it does right now, I want to start by just talking about a couple of terms that will help what we talk about over the next few minutes make more sense. So I'm going to start by talking about the term Gen AI. It's short for generative artificial intelligence, and it involves the production of new content. As many of you know, artificial intelligence has been around for decades. What's gotten different in the last 18 months or so is that the tools that are able to create new content have become a lot more accessible to everyday people. These days, you can interact with them using just natural language. You don't have to have any special coding skills or any special interfaces to get where you're trying to go. Another term that I think is really important is large language model, or LLM. If you've read about or used AI, you've probably come across this term. And it really is what it sounds like when we say intelligence. It's a cluster of what computer scientists call neurons, synthetic neurons, that behave in much the same way as our neurons do in our brain. Now, I'm not saying that this AI can do what our brains can do. It's nowhere near that point at this stage, but it is able to look at patterns and reproduce those patterns to predict what belongs together with other items. And to do this, it has to train on an enormous set of human created content. And this is a controversial issue because of copyright and things like that. But what's often lost in this discussion is that that tagged set of input has to be tagged, and it has to be notated by humans in order to be useful and provide the context that the AI needs in order to learn. So once the neurons have been created and once they've trained on the set, that's when we get a chance to interact with the AI through what we call a prompt. And the prompt is just natural language. Again, you don't have to have any special skills here. You simply ask the AI for what you need, as if you were asking an expert teacher or expert on how to fix your car. And because of the training that these AI models have, and the fact that many of the newer ones are able to do internet searches as well, you'll find really good quality responses from many of them. Now, the AI, as I said, is far from perfect. You may have heard that many AI tools have this ability and this propensity for what we call hallucinating. That means creating false information. Now, of course, they're going to get better over time. And as I said, when they can search the internet, they do a much better job of verifying what they're producing. But when it comes to making something with AI, you don't have to have some crazy computer science degree or a whole lot of experience. You just need a moment with the chat window to type what you need. So let's talk about some of the tools that are out there right now. There are literally 200 or more AI tools that are available to everyday people. I would say there's at least a dozen that are very useful to teachers and students and educators in all different fields. But I'm going to focus here on the 4 tools that are the most commonly used by teachers right now. And again, this field is changing so quickly, I think you probably would make a totally different slide if we came back and talked about this in even 6 months. In the top left corner is OpenAI's tool ChatGPT, which I'm sure you've heard of by now. It's the big guy that everyone's talking about. It's the one that is the most popular, most common, and the most advanced in a lot of ways. Next to that on the right is magicschool.ai, which is an education-focused AI tool that has a lot of great features. In the bottom left corner, we've got Khan Academy's AI, which is called Khanmigo, again, focused on helping students and teachers. And then the bottom right corner, we've got Google's take on AI chatbots, which is now called Gemini. It was called Bard up until a couple weeks ago. So these are the tools that exist out there right now. And what I'd like to do next is ask you what kinds of experiences you've had with AI. So let's take a moment and pause and use the chat to tell me and my partners here how you have used AI models in your personal life or in your classroom. So whether you've used them to help you find a recipe for some meal you were making, or whether you were trying to come up with a lesson plan for your classroom. Tell me about which tools you've used. Use the chat box to tell us, and Carrie will help me see some of those responses so we can talk about the ways that we've used them. I see that Aaron's used ChatGPT and Magic School. Great. Sounds like we've used a lot of these tools in a lot of different ways. Sounds like we're generating lesson plans, finding information. That's fantastic. Kara, I love the idea of using it to create emails to parents. I think that when it comes to composing just the right language, that's something AI does really well. And of course, writing grants. Yeah, boy, so much paperwork goes into it. It really helps a lot. That's fantastic, Lauren. We're going to talk about differentiation as we go along here. Tim, thanks for sharing that idea about uploading content and letting ChatGPT help create supporting documents that go with it. That's something we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes. Awesome, Angie. Planning travel is something I've never done with it, but I think that's a fantastic idea. So given all these wonderful things you guys have done, I know that what comes next in this presentation will feel familiar and comfortable to you. There are just so many ways that AI can help us as teachers that in order to fit this into an hour and have plenty of time for us to ask questions and share some ideas and resources, I wanted to focus on just 3 things that I think teachers need help with and AI can provide that help with. So we're going to focus for the next few minutes on 3 specific teacher tasks. I'm going to keep this little kitchen metaphor going because, as I mentioned, I'm kind of a fan when it comes to these cooking shows and movies. I'm also going to try and keep our conversation what we would call platform agnostic, meaning I'm going to try and give you ideas that you can use in any AI platform that you happen to have access to. We know that across the country, there are lots of different rules for who can use AI tools in school and who can't, and which tools are available. So rather than show you how to do one thing in one tool, I'd rather show you how to do that same thing in many different tools and maybe even give you a whole category of things to experiment with. So the 3 things we're going to work on are brainstorming, or as I like to call it here, creating a menu. We're going to talk about building content, which some of you have already done with it, which is that mise en place, the preparation of ingredients. And then we're going to talk about assessing student data or taste testing. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about the brainstorming part first. So the problem that many teachers face, and this is universal from what I've seen, is that we just don't have enough time to be creative. Sometimes when we get to the end of a unit or we're looking forward to an upcoming unit, we might feel like we know we want to make a change. We know we want to make something more interesting, more engaging, more up to date. But then we look at our calendars, we look at our work-life balance, and we realize that we just don't have the time to brainstorm ways to make our lessons more like we want them to be. And as a secondary point to that, we know about all of these great research-proven strategies and different tools that are out there that we can use, but finding the time to incorporate them, it could be a whole full-time job by itself. And so this is a place where I think AI can do a great job of helping us to incorporate the tools and strategies and engagement that we want to have in our lessons by helping us brainstorm ways to take a topic that we're going to teach and make it better, make it more research-based and more diversified for our students. So the 2 tips I have when you're using AI for this kind of purpose is, number 1, as was mentioned by a couple of the commenters, don't be afraid to upload copies of what you're starting with, because these AI tools can read any content that you give them and can use that as a starting point for the suggestions that they give. So if you've got a lesson plan that you've been using that you want a new spin on, or maybe you've got a really great strategy that you've been using, but you want to make it more differentiated for different students, start with something that you already have that's working, or maybe even something that's not working, but that you know is on the right track. And the second tip is an easy one. When you ask the AI to give you suggestions, don't ask for one suggestion. Don't even ask for 2 or 3. I usually start by asking for at least 10 different suggestions, because you know that some of the ideas it gives you are not going to work. Either not in your classroom, not in your location, or maybe they're just not going to work in the time frame that you have available. So ask for lots of ideas so that you can prune them down to the ones that will work in the situation that you have. So let's take a look at a sample prompt. And after I show it to you, I want to take a moment to show you how to put it into practice right away, particularly for those of you that gave us a 1 when you said how comfortable you were with AI. So here's an example of a prompt that is guaranteed to give you some ideas that you can probably use. So it says, give me 20 ideas for ways to teach addition of fractions to 6th grade students who are struggling. The section that's in that blue color, addition of fractions, that's where you're going to put in the topic or the skill that you're trying to teach. It can be a broad category, but I would recommend you get as specific as you can. In green, I've listed the grade level there, and that's really important because the AI can use its massive database of learning to focus in on exactly what's appropriate for the age group that you're working with. And in red, I've mentioned that these are students who are struggling. So I've provided a little bit more information about my students, and that's going to help me to get from the AI exactly what I'm looking for. So let's pause here a minute. And for those of you that have not used AI tools before, let's give it a try. So what I'm going to do is open up a window to ChatGPT, which is the tool that I use the most right now. If you haven't made an account with ChatGPT, it's easy to do. If you prefer another model, such as magicschool.ai or Gemini from Google or something else, feel free to open up a window to that one right now. Again, for those of you that are new to these tools, you'll see that there are lots of suggestions on the screen, but the big thing on the screen is just the same kind of chat space that you would see in your messaging app that's waiting for you to ask something. Next to that is a picture of a paperclip, and that's how we can upload examples of work, starting points that we want to share with the model to help it give us even more of what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and type into this space the exact prompt that I put into the slide. Ooh. I'm going to go ahead and make some typos just so that you all know what it's like, because anytime you have to type something in front of more than one person, you are going to type something wrong. And as teachers, I'm sure we've all had an opportunity to experience this firsthand. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that up arrow to send the message to ChatGPT. And then we can all see right here in the moment what kinds of output it gives us. So you can see that it only took a few seconds and it's already producing for us ideas. Now, remember, we want to ask for lots of ideas so that we can find at least one or two that work for us in our situation. And if you find several that work, why not set up stations around your room, or centers, if you want to call them that, where your students can get different experiences, maybe even rotate through these different experiences. So we're up to 13 ideas already. I'm going to go ahead and let that finish up. I see there was a question there about the ChatGPT 4, which is what I'm using right now. This is part of the pro level that you can pay for with ChatGPT. The basic level is free. I do find that ChatGPT's 4's responses are much better and more nuanced, and it often includes some explanatory text at the beginning and the end that sort of qualify the answers. Like, for example, this response ended with the statement, "By incorporating a variety of teaching strategies, you can address the diverse needs of your students and help them overcome challenges with adding fractions." For me, having this higher quality output is worth paying for the pro level. And you will find that no matter which tool you use, there are plenty of free things that you can do, and then more advanced things that you end up paying for. Generally speaking, you're going to pay no more than about $20 a month. And depending on what plan you sign up for, you may even get a better deal than that. I think it's worth trying. They usually have a free trial of the advanced features so that you know what you're missing and then make a decision that makes sense for you. Okay. So let's look back at some of these answers that ChatGPT gave us. I love the idea of, as you can probably expect, the idea of a cooking class as a way to use recipes to teach fractions, right? Because we're always adding fractions when we're putting together recipes. I also think that the one right after that says to use technology, it's kind of vague about what that technology might be, but we might already know what kinds of technology could help us to provide that kind of focus. Number 12 suggests group projects. I like that idea, getting kids together to help them work together. Number 15 suggests a fraction wall where you might put up some anchor chart type things that allow students to see visual representations of fractions. Now, I'm not a sixth grade math teacher, but I think these ideas hold some value and that they might provide what teachers need. So I'm going to take us back to the slides now. Now that you've had a chance to see how easy it is to use these AI tools to get some of the output that we're talking about, let's go ahead and move forward and talk about another prompt that we could use to get the AI to help us brainstorm. So this prompt says, you are an expert on project-based learning. Suggest 5 different projects that teach representative democracy to 5th graders. Now remember, in blue is the topic, so feel free to change that up into a different topic. In green is the grade level, super important. And in red, I've given it a little bit more specific about what type of lesson I'm trying to brainstorm. In this case, project-based learning. Notice that first clause that says you're an expert on project-based learning. That's a strategy that folks who use AI use all the time, and it's called priming. Essentially, research has shown that if you tell the AI what role you want it to play or what expertise you want it to have, it actually produces more high quality output that matches the kinds of things you're looking for. So don't be afraid to start by telling the AI what you need it to be and then ask it to do the thing you want it to do. Now, as we go through these prompts, please feel free to use the chat, the comment feature to give me some feedback and let me know how we're doing when it comes to meeting your needs and giving you some ideas that you might make use of. Also, your suggestions in the comments, of course, will be helpful to others who may learn from your experience. So here comes our third and final prompt when it comes to brainstorming. This time I've written, come up with 10 lessons like this one that teaches symbiosis. Make them appropriate for a diverse group of 8th graders. Again, in blue, a topic. In green, I've given you the grade level, and I've even added in that they're very diverse. This time in red, I wanted to point out that in order to use this prompt, I would have attached an example of a lesson that I already had been using to teach about symbiosis so that ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using knows what I'm starting with. So those are 3 prompts that you could use to help you brainstorm or come up with ideas for lessons using the AI to help you. So I'm going to leave this prompt up, and I'd like to invite you to take a minute to try some of these out, 1 or more of them out, and give us some feedback, give us some comments to try them out. We'll pause here for just a minute, and I'd love to hear from you about what's working for you and what's not, or maybe how you've already figured out a way to improve on these in the way you've used AI in the past. And don't forget, we've got 2 more tasks to talk about, 2 more ways that AI can help us as teachers. I really appreciate all of you being here and the interaction that you're providing. So Kelly asked a great question. How would the free version be different? And that's actually a great question that I'm happy to answer for you in a very easy way, because when you have the pro version, you can switch back to the other version very easily. And so I'll go ahead and do that and just give you a firsthand idea of how it might be different. The quality of the content is similar. One of the things that ChatGPT 4 can do is it can search the internet, so it knows about new information, current news, and it can help you to search for things online by using the AI combined with the searching capability. So I'm going to switch tabs for just a moment to answer that question. So here I am back with ChatGPT, but this time I've switched to the ChatGPT 3.5 model, which is the one you get for free. And let's just see how the answer is different here. Goes a little bit faster because it's not doing as much work. And I see some ideas here that are very similar. Maybe not as full featured. Scaffolded practice was there before. Peer tutoring was there in the last list. visual representations. I think that's similar to something that the other model gave. So you can see that the quality of the output is not quite as good, but definitely for brainstorming, probably sufficient. All right, I'm going to take us back. Erica, thanks for that feedback about priming. It's really interesting. These models work in ways that the scientists who created them don't even fully understand all the time. But by experimenting with them, we can learn a whole lot. Yeah, thank you, Katie. And that's really important. I'm glad you pointed that out. I was lucky that I got great feedback, great output from my first attempt with a prompt. But you can always maintain that conversation and tweak what you're asking it for. If it gives you something that's going to take too long, you can ask for something that takes less time. Oh, Amanda, that's a great point. Yeah, fantastic. I like that you're being more specific, right? Because the standards do vary from state to state, and you can, or even from county to county in some cases, district to district. You can definitely paste in the entire standard instead of just a topic. Yeah, that's a great point. So Erica, that's a great point, and I think you could do that search and maybe have an answer to your question yourself. But typically, what I find when I Google search is I get a bunch of links, right? And I have to click on those links to find out what they tell me. Whereas what ChatGPT and the other tools are doing is they're actually pulling from all the things that they know and all the things they can search for and creating some new content. I find that the final output I get from the AI tool is further down the path toward a finished product that I can use. I see that Jennifer Wilson has a question there. Okay, that is a great question. So you feel like you're looking for a strategy that might help you to add to what's there. So there is another strategy that I really like that's called reverse prompt engineering, which is where you take output that's similar to what you're trying to get, and you upload that output. So you give the AI output and you say, now, what prompt would produce this output? And when it gives you that prompt, you can then change that prompt by changing out the topic or the grade level or something like that. But at least you know what sort of structure to use in your prompt to get the kind of output that you're looking for. So I would try that for sure. I would also suggest trying to just add more detail in your further statements that you make in the conversation with the chatbot and let it change its output to meet what you're asking for. Dr. Knox is asking about images. ChatGPT 4 is multimodal, which means it can produce images as well as text. It tries to figure out from your prompt which one you need. I understand that the pro level of Gemini does the same thing. I don't know if Magic School or Conmigo can produce images at this point, but I do know that ChatGPT 4 does. And it can also read images. Like you can give it an image and ask it to come up with questions about that image. All right, we're going to keep things rolling here because I want to value your time and I want to make sure that you have a chance to experience all the great things we're talking about. So let's move on now to talk about the mise en place, the whole idea of making content, which we've really been touching on here, right? We've come up with ideas for what the lessons could be, but we haven't actually made any content yet. And that's a fantastic way to use AI to make your life a lot simpler. Now, I would say in addition to the problems that are mentioned here, like personalizing content and making it differentiated, which is always difficult, it also gives teachers a chance to collaborate, because if you can bring something to your professional learning team to discuss together, or if you've got colleagues that are all looking to build the same content, you can work together to make some really great stuff in a lot less time. But you have to be careful here, as you are whenever you use AI. But the big thing is treating anything that the AI gives you as a draft, okay? I like to think of it as if I have a new student teacher working in my classroom and they've come up with a lesson plan. I'm going to look over that lesson plan before I give it to students. AI is the same way. Anything I get from the AI, I'm going to pay close attention to before I show it to students. I'm going to make sure that it's accurate and that it meets the needs of my particular group of students. And as I mentioned, work with your team, work with your professional learning community so that you can together divide up the labor and create some really awesome learning experiences for your kids. So let's look at some prompts that do this. Video guides. I know a lot of us use videos to help teach, and it can be hard to create the video guide where you might ask different kinds of questions if you've watched the video only once or twice. And of course, going back and watching it and pausing to find where the questions are can be difficult. With these modern tools, you have lots of ways that you can get the AI to make a video guide for you. Some of the more specialized tools like Magic School and Conmigo, you can just use a YouTube link and it'll basically watch the YouTube video for you and generate a bunch of questions that you can use as drafts to make changes. You can also access the transcript for a YouTube video and copy and paste that transcript into something like ChatGPT and ask it to generate questions. And here's the really important part. Don't forget to ask for an answer key, because there's no point in you having to go back and figure out the answers if the chatbot can at least give you its best attempt to answer those questions. Now, you may want to change those answers. You may feel like they're not sufficient, but save yourself that trouble, right? Save yourself the trouble of having to create the entire video guide and answer key. Another prompt that I like to use a lot is one that I talk about a lot too, which is having ChatGPT create explanations or summaries of content, similar to what Amanda's talking about right there, where you let ChatGPT look at some text or create some text that's going to help you to teach kids. In this case, I asked it for an explanation of the causes of World War I, and I told it what grade level to make it appropriate for. And then right in the same prompt, I can ask it for different tiered levels for different readers. And ChatGPT or whatever tool you use is going to make sure the content is the same, but it can ensure that the reading level matches where your kids are at. And you can plug in specific Lexile levels rather than grade levels or general terms. You can get as specific as you want to be. And remember that if ChatGPT gives you some output that's not what you're looking for, refine your prompt, ask it to change it and make it either simpler or more complex. Sometimes you want the explanation to include certain vocabulary words. Well, you can provide those words in your prompt and have ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using make an explanation that includes the vocabulary words. All right. Our third and final prompt in this area is when it comes to creating quick assessments. I love to use quick assessments like exit tickets, but sometimes I have a hard time coming up with what those exit tickets could be. And you don't always want your assessments, even short ones, to look the same for everybody, because then kids are tempted to cheat off each other. Here, I asked the chatbot to create for me 3 very different exit tickets that cover the same information and that might have different styles that appeal to a variety of different students. And that way I can ensure that everybody's getting something a little bit different and it feels kind of personalized. Math questions are a huge area where I think ChatGPT can make our lives easier, because writing new math problems is tough. But if you want to give your kids lots of practice, you can use ChatGPT to generate lots of questions, and you could ask for 100 or ask for 50 and pick your 10 favorites and use them. So let me bring all 3 of those prompts back up for another moment so that we can practice this a little bit and continue to chat about it a little bit. I want to know from you guys which of these you think you might use, or which of these ideas you've already used and how you've found ways to make it useful to your students. So take a minute, if you haven't already, try one of these out. Or if you've already used them, tell us in the comments what's worked well for you and maybe what hasn't. I want to take a minute here to address a question that I've seen a little bit, which is, okay, Paul, but what about students using AI? And the truth is there's a whole nother world of ways that we can teach students to use AI productively. I've avoided talking about it here for mainly the reason that not every student has access to these tools directly. Of course, down the road, we're going to have to teach our kids how to use these tools because they're going to be parts of their lives in the same way that we teach them how to use calculators, right? Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I love the idea of being able to create something quick. Skim over it, make sure it meets your needs, and then use it. It really is like having an assistant teacher there. Oh, that's cool, Katie. I didn't realize that. So a Magic School generates questions for you. You can have it just switch out the ones you don't like. That's cool. Yeah, thank you, Amanda. That's a great point. Like you said, we can't say it enough. Check out the output that you get and make sure that it doesn't have bias or hallucinations that would affect its usefulness. Tim, that's a great point, and one that I'm going to mention later too. I love the idea of using AI to make exemplars for your kids, right? Examples of what the final product should look like. Yeah, Eric, that's a great point. At one point, we probably did have leveled text for everything, but now we don't, and we can generate what we need this way. All right, so we're going to move on into our final task that I think AI can help us with the most, and that is what I'm calling taste testing. But it's really about assessing the students' learning in your classroom. So the problem that we have is that even simple feedback to students is incredibly time consuming. As you heard Carrie say at the beginning, I've written an entire book about feedback, and yet I struggle to find the time to give students feedback as frequently as I'd like to help them see what they could do better and help encourage them to make improvements. And personalized feedback, we know it's the most effective kind, but it's also the hardest one to do. Because if you're writing a personalized comment to each one of your 130 students, you're going to spend all of your time grading and assessing and giving feedback. You're not going to have any time left for anything else. Now, before we go forward, there's some really big important caveats here that I want to make clear. Currently, none of the AI tools that are out there are secure enough that you should be uploading any personal information about students. There might come a time down the road where, just like Google Drive can be made to be encrypted and private for districts that want that, there might be a time down the road where we might have custom AI tools that are safe to upload personal data to, but we are not there right now. Never upload student names or identifying information to an AI chatbot to get feedback. But also, I want to give you this tip, which is when AI tools give you examples of comments and feedback that you can use, put them into whatever tool you use to grade and create a comment bank that you can draw from so that you're not always going back to the AI tool. You're going back to that comment bank that's going to be full of rich comments that you can give to your students. All right, let's take a look at the first prompt that I would use on this front. So here I've uploaded an example of student work, scrubbed of any personal information, and I have asked the chatbot to give me useful feedback for them about a specific thing that I wanted that student to do. So I want to know how well the student identified theme and tone in a story, and I want them to give feedback about that. Now, this is where sometimes the newer, more advanced chatbots do a much better job because they can phrase things in a more natural way. Their output tends to sound a lot more like a caring teacher than some of the less sophisticated chatbots. But I also want to make the point these chatbots are constantly evolving. And so the level of chatbot that you have to pay for right now might very well be the free one that you can use down the road. And Rachel, thank you for sharing specific tools like that. That's fantastic. There are a lot of great chatbots out there that have very specific uses that they're really, really good at. Next, I want to share with you a prompt that I've used for making rubrics. For me, rubrics are so important so that students and teachers have transparency and objectivity in how we grade things like projects. But of course, a challenge of that is that building rubrics can be really complicated. So I strongly recommend asking the chatbot to help you build the rubric you want. Tell them what you want the levels to be, what you want the different factors or categories to be, and let it help you build those rubrics. And then finally, this is what I was touching on earlier when I mentioned comment banks. I love asking the chatbot to give me examples of feedback that I could give to a particular student's work, especially if there are common mistakes that lots of students have. So I ask the chatbot to give me some great feedback I can give to students, and then I reuse that feedback. It's still better than what I sometimes would come up with on my own, but not quite as personalized as having a different feedback for every student. So here we have those 3 prompts that I just shared with you that can be used as just the tip of the iceberg for helping students get feedback on their work. I'm really excited about a future where students can use these AI tools to help get feedback on their work themselves, so that instead of you grading every draft of an assignment, they can use a chatbot to refine it, and then what you get is much closer to being the final product. Awesome, Katie. I'm glad that rubrics were a selling point for you too. All right, we're down to our last few minutes, and I want to make sure we wrap up with enough time that anybody who has questions can ask them. We get a chance to address them. So I just want to say that we've talked about 3 tasks for teachers, but there are tons of other ways that AI tools can help us. In yellow here, I want to say that making exemplars, as I mentioned already, is a fantastic way to use the AI chatbot. You can say, here's my assignment, make me an example of what would be an A, what would be an example of a C, and what would be an example of an F. And then you can provide those exemplars to your students so they understand better what you're aiming for. Making graphs that you can have your students analyze, or even data sets that they can analyze. That's a really powerful use of AI. And then I love to use AI to help build extension and enrichment activities for my students that are at grade level or above and are ready for something more challenging. So I can take my existing lessons and I can push them a little further with the help of AI. That's just a little bit of what the future holds for these AI tools. So I want to finish up with a couple of questions and see what you guys say about this. So I'm going to start with the first question, which is, which of these 3 tasks do you think will save you the most time? Do you think brainstorming, building content, or assessing student work will be the real high leverage use of AI for you? Go ahead and take a minute and let us know. It's great. Looks like we have a wide variety of answers. I agree with a lot of you that the building content is where the high leverage stuff happens, because it's doing something that you could do, but just in far less time. Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing. And I've got one more question for you before we kind of wrap things up here. Of all the prompts that I shared with you today, or that you saw in the comments from other members of our community here, what is a prompt that you think you're going to use again, maybe even tomorrow in your classroom? What's the prompt that you are really glad you learned about today and that you think will make a difference for you? Go ahead and put that into the chat so that we can all see which ones are having the biggest impact. And again, totally okay if you didn't get it from me, but you got it from somebody else in the space. All right. Well, continue to throw your answers up there. I don't want to cut anybody short, but I do want to make sure that you have a chance to give us some feedback about this session. I know Carrie's going to hop in here in a minute, and I just want to say before she does, my social media handle is Mr. Science Teach on all the platforms. The QR code there is a place where you can give us feedback on this session so we can make the next one even better. As Carrie mentioned, I have published a book with my good friend Bill Ferreter, and you can get it on Amazon. And I'm hoping to have a book about these AI tools and tons more examples of prompts that can be in your hands later this year. And of course, we are excited to invite you to the next of these Not Your Average PD sessions. Coming up, we're going to talk to you about how you can create a virtual team to help your students across large distances, maybe even across the whole. So, Carrie, I'm going to let you take over. Thank you all. I really appreciate the time that you gave us today to work together today.
Thank you so much, Paul. And thank you to all of you who joined us tonight and for being so active in the chat. Y'all were helping answer each other's questions, the ones that Paul couldn't get to because he was trying to teach. So I really appreciate that. We certainly use the expertise in the webinar. There is a session feedback link on the screen there. So if you would please scan that with your phone, or I just dropped the link in the chat as well. We really pride ourselves on using feedback to improve our work with our programming. So if you would please use that link in the chat or the QR code on the screen and share that feedback. We take that feedback very seriously. So thank you so much. We thank you in advance for doing that. We hope that you all join us for a future Not Your Average PD session. The link is there on the screen. And again, I'll drop that in the chat. Thank you all for joining us, and have a great night.